Aloha, I am Kaliko Santos from the Oha Kauaʻi office. For your information, this talk story is being recorded. Community engagement of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is finding new ways to engage and connect with community and is bringing you this virtual Manaʻi Maoliʻola event today. To honor your time, this is the agenda we are following today. Okay, agenda. I'll give a quick overview of Manaʻi Maoliʻola, introduction of our panelists, our talk story, and then we're going to wrap up. Again, if you're just joining us, I am Kaliko Santos, a community outreach coordinator under community engagement with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. I am born and raised and based on Kauaʻi, so today's topic is also of special interest to me. The Oha Kauaʻi office is located at 4405 Kukui Grove Street in Lihue. However, our office is closed at present due to this pandemic, and staff, including myself and Noalani Nakasone, are currently teleworking with modified services available. For more information on that, can be found on our website, www.oha.org. This talk story is brought to you by OHA's Manaʻi Maoliʻola. These workshops, presentations, or talk stories are reflective of OHA's strategic foundations and directions. OHA's strategic plan, Manaʻi Maoliʻola, Strength to Well-Being, includes 3 foundations: Aina, land and water, Mo'omehu, culture, and Ohana, family. OHA recognizes these foundations have the power to affect the well-being of Native Hawaiians. Therefore, they are woven into OHA's plans to affect change in the areas of educational pathways, economic stability, quality housing, and health outcomes. These 4 directions will be used to guide OHA's work to better the conditions of Native Hawaiians. OHA is implementing strategies aligned with our foundations and directions to achieve our envisioned outcomes for a thriving and abundant Lahui. More information on these can also be found on our website, www.oha.org. If you want to learn more about other upcoming workshops, OHA-sponsored events, and things happening in the Native Hawaiian community, you can subscribe to Kauaʻi, our monthly e-newspaper, and we'll provide the link in the chat. Now, let me introduce you to our panelists. My co-host today is none other than Malia Nobrega Oliveira. Malia is from Hanapepe Valley, Kona, Kauaʻi. She is currently the Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge Director of Strategic Partnerships and Community Engagement. Malia is also the president of Moku'o Mano Kalanipo, the Kauaʻi Council of the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs. Malia is a Native Hawaiian educator, kumuhula, event strategist, certified health coach, and advocate of Indigenous rights at all levels, locally, regionally, and internationally. Her experiences demonstrate her commitment to her people, language, and culture, and to the Indigenous peoples worldwide. Welcome, Malia.
Hui, aloha.
Aloha. Also joining us today is Maureen Fodell. Maureen serves as the board secretary and researcher for Friends of King Kaumualiʻi, and she joined them at 2013 and has been instrumental in Friends becoming a nonprofit in 2016. Maureen studied hula and culture under Kumuhula Pohako Nishimitsu. She retired after 19 years with the Department of Education here on Kauaʻi and that follows 20 years as teacher, administrator, and program assistant in California. Maureen lives in the Ahapua'a of Waimea and is currently active in Hawaiian Studies Kupuna program under Kumu Sabra Kauka and Kupu'ola with Kumu Kehau Kekua. Welcome, Maureen.
Aloha.
Our final panelist, you have all been waiting for, is Auntie Alitha Ka'ohi. Auntie Alitha serves as president of Friends of King Kaumualiʻi. She officially retired as a state of Hawaii librarian, but she has remained a well-loved storyteller here on Kauaʻi. She also was a lecturer at Kauaʻi Community College and is the manager of the West Kauaʻi Visitor Centers in Waimea. As a descendant of King Kaumualiʻi, it is her vision and unfailing commitment that saw the statue of our mo'i ali'i from concept until now standing in Pa'ulaʻula. Aloha, Auntie Alitha, and welcome everyone.
Aloha.
Malia, would you start us off?
Sure. I'm excited to be a part of the conversation today and to be here with all of you, those that are joining, maybe here on Kauaʻi and maybe beyond our Pai'aina of Hawaii. So aloha to everybody. Before we jump in, I wanted to start with an oli, if that's okay. And this is an oli aloha from all of us here on Kauaʻi and on behalf of the Kaumualiʻi ohana. O nau nai kala me kalehua he halele hua no ia nakano o ka uno ia e ano i nei e li a nei hoi o ka hiki mai, a hiki mai no o kou, a hiki puno me ke aloha, aloha e, aloha e, aloha e. Velina. So aloha again, everyone, and really excited to have you all join us and to learn more about the mo'olelo of King Kaumualiʻi, a beloved of us, anyone that has connections here to Kauaʻi. And so let's just jump into our stories here and learn more about our mo'olelo that really grounds us to our aina. And so I wanted to start by asking Auntie Alitha to give us an introduction to Kaumualiʻi and who is this beloved king that we all love and adore. Auntie, maybe can you give us an introduction about King Kaumualiʻi and tell us a little bit more about who is this beloved king?
Okay. Thank you. Galina, to all of you that are listening, and I want to share with you who is Kaumualiʻi. I have to tell you that in order to have had that statue, we had to have an awareness program because nobody knew who Kaumualiʻi was. Okay, and that has taken us almost 9 years to do a program for who is this man that we would build a statue for. I have to tell you that begin my story is that I was inspired. I had belonged to a group in late 1900s and the early part of 2000. They wanted to build a statue. But there is no picture, no photo of the king. Only what the traders came and said what he looked like. And in 2012, an author wrote a book, came to see me with Barbara Bennett, who is the editor of our paper for Kauaʻi. And within this book was a photo, no, I'm sorry, a painting. And that painting was done by Brooke Parker in Native Hawaiian. Who is this? I said to the author, Lee Croft. Why do you ask? This is the photo that inspired me. The low helmet told me he was Kaumualiʻi. We reached out to Brooke Parker and gave us unlimited use of this. I will point out while I'm here, this photo is showing that the helmet and the cape is the gift that was given to Kaumualiʻi by Kamehameha. Notice the difference in the helmet. Who is this person, Kaumualiʻi, the last independent king of Kauaʻi and Niʻihau, whose lineage was the highest at the time that he was born. The people loved him. Why? Because he cared for them. He made sure they were all well. I don't recall within my family that he had ever been a warrior, except when he had a battle against his brother, Keawe, who was trying to take the throne away from him. He was a man of peace. In 1810, he cedes Kauaʻi and Niʻihau to Kamehameha I. Kamehameha had failed in 1796 and again in 1804 to conquer Kauaʻi. But in 1810, Kamehameha had prepared and was ready to invade Kauaʻi. What would you do if you were the king? Kamehameha was coming not with just canoes, foreign ships, cannons, and guns. The kahuna warned him that Kamehameha would try to trick him. He ceded Kauaʻi because he did not want his family, the people of Kauaʻi and Niʻihau, to see the horrors of war and the bloodshed. The article that Oha by Oha published, I have to tell you, is well written and much information in there. Kaumualiʻi, like all rulers, wanted to regain his kingdom. He was only a vassal king under Kamehameha. A vassal king because Kamehameha, when Pu'iwa, when he asked Kaumualiʻi, what stone do you choose? By choosing the white stone, it was a stone of peace. Did he inherit the mana from his mother, who was credited for 2 attempts of invasion that she had prayed and banned the invasion from happening. Kamehameha, Kaumualiʻi, you will be a vassal king. Kaumualiʻi agreed. The pact was sealed. And he went to Kukaniloko because he had been warned that the chiefs of Kamehameha wanted to rule Kauaʻi and come to Kauaʻi. But as a vassal king, he was still his kingdom. He looked over thousands of acres of lihue. Kauaʻi was named lihue after the lihue of Oahu by Kauaʻi. He looked over that and said, Kainoa ho, the sea is free. I don't have to look for my enemy. And then he returned to Kauaʻi. Isaac Davis, a trusted member in Kamehameha's courts, was poisoned because he had warned Kaumualiʻi. Kaumualiʻi returned in 1821. Liholiho comes to Kauaʻi, entertains him for an entire month, boards the ship Ha'aheo, anchored in the Bay of Waimea. And as the anchor was lifted, Kaumualiʻi was kidnapped, forced to marry Ka'ahumanu for political reasons. By Ka'ahumanu marrying Kaumualiʻi, she now is the ruler of all Hawaii because she was a co-ruler with Liholiho. And Liholiho was Oahala already. I just want to thank you. There's so much. We could be, the stories just unfold by itself. But I just will say that I was called to do this, first by being inspired, and then by my ancestors. As a child, I used to go with my father as the bag girl when he goes fishing. And we fish below on the coastline where Kauaʻi is. The place was just covered with sugar cane, cattle, always this pile of rock that I could see. And Papa would make me sit on the shoreline below the tide line, because above that was owned by the Robinson family, including the fort. Even though we had kuleanas in there. So Papa would slip out along the river and enter the fort. And I would say to Papa when he come back, what did you see in there? What is in there? I went to say my aloha to Papa. My father always referred to Kaumualiʻi as Papa. Papa is the highest you can address someone. I don't come from the royal church. Kaumualiʻi had many women, and I will say he had an eye for beauty. What proof do I have that I am a descendant? Kaumualiʻi was the king, and he could make any changes. But he saw this woman and he desired her. We don't know her name, but he asked his kahu to build all of this pukeave. And when it was burned, it was lit, it had more smoke than it had flames. And he walked through it. I always knew it as Ali'i Mahu. The Ali'i can change to be with a commoner. Otherwise, she would be hurt. We know nothing about her after that. But on one occasion, he wrapped himself and her in a tapa, a moe tapa, the finest that you could find. And the child was conceived, and he was named Kainoaho. She was given the tapa. If it was a boy, Kainoaho, and he was to be wrapped in that tapa. I am the caretaker of that tapa. So my story comes from the family, and that's what you want to hear. You can read everything. I'm a retired public librarian. When I read, first thing I look is what is the bibliography? Who wrote it? Who wrote that? And if you keep going back, people love to enhance. So many times, books do not tell you the truth. Storytellers enhance. But this is my story of my family, of Kainoaho, and then all the way down to me. The tapa has already been given. As long as I live, it will be in my care. It will go to my mo'opuna. It will skip a generation. It will go to my mo'opuna, Kaua ma. Mahalo, everybody.
Mahalo, Auntie. Mahalo. So our next question is going to bring into for you, Maureen. Who is Friends of King Kaumualiʻi and your mission? There's a nonprofit. And can you also give us some examples of the community awareness and educational projects that Friends of King Kaumualiʻi have been involved with?
Thank you for inviting me to share. And of course, Auntie Aletha's story inspired all of us who came together on the board, and we took up her mission and her goals as ours. We wanted to help in that endeavor. And while she has a very personal, familial relationship to King Kaumualiʻi, who he is also woven intimately into the fabric of what is Kauaʻi. And whether you were born here or lived here and worked here, you start to realize that Kauaʻi is kind of a different place. And part of that difference is elusive, but it's very definitely interwoven tightly with who Kaumualiʻi is. So I think it was mentioned that our board came together in a more formal way in 2012 and wrote our mission to be to bring more awareness, not just to tourists, but to locals who may not be as familiar with who Kaumualiʻi is. You have to remember that when he was born the very year that foreigners, Cook and others, first came to the shores of Kauaʻi at Waimea. And that was a very like Kulihia time. Lots of changes happening. Kamehameha is going around trying to unite all the islands through war. And at the same time, more and more foreigners are coming and leaving their mark and trying to interact or take over Kauaʻi. So you have a period of time that Kaumualiʻi's individuality is somewhat on the side. It's not up front, but his character and his personality is very different and very much a fabric of Kauaʻi. So our goals were to bring more awareness of who he was as a being and what his connection to Kauaʻi was. And one thing was that he was of a peaceful nature, having been raised primarily by his mother. His father was often off to war with his brother. So he had a different emphasis on carrying the island and the people. He learned everything about the people and he learned peace. That was his way. That was his way. And yeah, that's Kauaʻi too. We have our own way of doing things and we take care of each other. So we got behind Aletha 100% about building a statue in his honor, but also helping people to make a personal connection and understand who he was. So one of the main things we had to do, we had done for several years different kind of events under Waimea Town Celebration, but we felt in order to move forward and we had to have an independent entity. So we got our own 501c3 and we wrote some grants. And one major thing that we did was in 2017, we had Ho'olaulea dedicated to Kaumualiʻi. And we invited key halau who are long-standing history of Kauaʻi behind them and invited them to perform Kaumualiʻi and Kauaʻi mele. And we also invited kupuna, who give so much on this island, but we invited them to come and share their mana'o, to share crafts. And yes, we had vendors and things, but it was like, okay, let's just have a sort of a party to celebrate Kaumualiʻi and celebrate the kind of crafts that we value. So that was very special. We had people sitting at tables doing, making lauhala things and making lehulu and making lei and all sorts of things. And people were just sitting around talking story, getting to know each other. And the background was song and dance. And at that time, we said out loud, we want to build a statue. We had already just a 3-foot maquette, bronze, like a prototype, but we wanted an 8-foot statue and we want it at Pa'ulaʻula because that is where Kaumualiʻi was raised. That's a Hawaiian place. When Cook came, it was a kapu place, only ali'i. And over time, it became more, other people could come. But at that ho'olaulea, we wanted to engage children too. So we invited Brooke Parker back to be the judge of a student art contest. And you can see, if you look right in the middle, there's one of the students from Ele'ele School looked up at this poster that we provided to all the classrooms on the island and copied in his own mind, using soil pigments, his version of King Kaumualiʻi off of Brooks. And there were many other things, many other, expressions of who Kaumualiʻi was. We provided the teachers and the schools with information more about what he was like as a student, what he was like. He was considered brilliant, very, very high intelligence. He taught himself English by hanging out with some sailors. He was very interested in the science of the time. He was interested in his island, and we wanted the children to feel like, oh, that's kind of like me. And so how they could build a connection to that. And that's what we were trying to do in the art contest. So we had the students there, we had them doing all different kinds of hands-on activities, and hula and mele, songs written particularly for Kaumualiʻi. So at that time also, people made commitments. Dee Morikawa had said to us, I'm going to help you get a grant to finish the statue. Bernard Carvalho, Derek Kawakami, and many, many others came and said, we'll be behind you. And so our mission became like weaving a lei. Each person came and brought in a little bit to keep weaving this lei to make it stronger and stronger of our connection of our community, our lahui, all the way through until, yes, we did get a state grant, and we had an artist who then we were able to size up the statue to 8 feet and continued working on that. And that culminated to a certain point, it culminated in the dedication, which we shared just this last March, although the work continues.
Mahalo, Marine Kalamai. You know, I'm showing this one slide that you shared of other ways of raising community awareness, and I like you mentioned earlier about reaching out to our keiki, to the young ones through the schools. And I know it was mentioned, I think, in the article and other places about partnerships with Bill Arakaki and others. And I think that's so important. But I also see here, I recognize it as the Kauaʻi and Lihue Airport. Tell us a little bit more about some of those kinds of partnerships.
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that. This was right after we did the Ho'olaulea. We had a connection with Garden Island Arts Council, on which I'm the board, and Carol Yotsuda does, she does 2 windows at the airport of local things. And so she helped us put together this display for visitors coming and going on Kaumualiʻi. Some of the other things that we did, though, in the community, we took the maquette, Aletha and I, went around the island, holo holo, from Hanalei all the way to Poipu, as well as, you know, our own community, and shared stories. Here is a picture of King Kaumualiʻi School invited us to be honored and honor the king at their May Day. So that was really special. And each event that we did brought more appreciation for not just our goal to have the statue, but a greater understanding of, oh, this is Kaumualiʻi, this is Kauaʻi, and this is really, you know, something that is just for us, for our island, although to share with others. So one other thing that was very significant as far as a foundational piece, adding and building, was for a while DLNR, we put the statue at the state park that had been for years called Russian Fort, which is a misnomer. The Russians were here, a few Russian crewmen, but mostly Aleuts and George Schaefer, were on the island for about a year in 1816, and then were expelled by Kamehameha and Kaumualiʻi. So why is it called Russian Fort, this place that was a sacred wahipana that had at least 2 heiau on it? And can we please start calling it the Hawaiian name again? There's been, over time, on Kauaʻi, trying to put signage for the accurate naming of places of this island. And we wanted to continue that. And as you know, Malia, you were a big part of that, because when there were Russians here a couple years ago trying to say, this was a Russian place, and there were meetings held, and we felt like the Hawaiian story, the indigenous, the story of this place needs to be honored. And we, well, you know that you wrote a resolution and it was passed by, maybe you want to share more of the details, but my understanding, it was passed by all of the associations of civic clubs.
Sure. Mahalo. And yeah, go ahead, Anthony. Go ahead.
Malia, can I add something? I think one of the most important things that happened was when we, the painting by Brooke Parker, I went to see Mr. Arakaki, who was the head of the Kauaʻi Educational Department, and he was very willing. Barbara Bennett went to the Kauaʻi Hindu monastery, and they printed 800 18 by 24, 10 by 11, 1,000, and 1,000 cards. These were distributed to every classroom on Kauaʻi, public, private schools, charter schools, and homeschool was also invited. Also, we prepared a historical timeline. My dear friend, who just passed away last week, Stanley Lum, and I both authored the timeline. This was distributed to the schools because we wanted the teachers to use that. One of the things that he said, can the kupunas in the schools begin to talk about Kaumualiʻi? Can your May Day program be about Kaumualiʻi? So I want to thank the Kauaʻi Monastery, Hindu Monastery, and Brooke, your picture is thing. I did meet him at Kamehameha School. We only talked on the phone, and I said he introduced himself. And when I looked at the paintings, I thought of Herb Kane. And he said that he had been a student of Herb Kane. But he introduced himself. And I asked him, how did you conceive that painting? He said he went to the museum and sat there, meditated, looked at it, and then one day picked up his palette, picked up his brush, and painted it. So for me, that painting has a lot of character, but it's a spiritual painting. So thank you.
Mahalo. Yeah, you know, I'm just always learning new things about Kaumualiʻi and about the process. And so, you know, before maybe we share a little bit about the resolution, I'm wondering, you know, part of that process, community process you went through of sharing in the schools, and then having these different displays and the ho'olaule'a, which really created a partnership with an artist to get you started on the path of the statue. And I know we have some photos that we can share of that process, and then maybe that'll lead us into a little more conversation about pa'ulaʻula. So who would want to share a little bit more about the statue? And I'll bring those photos up for you.
And if I could just jump in while you're finding that, I think one of the other reasons why Kaumualiʻi's story was lost is once he was kidnapped and he went to Oahu, he came back once since that time, the individual story of Kauaʻi kind of got merged with the story of where Hawaii was going and all of its interactions with other world powers. And as you know, sadly, in less than 100 years, it was taken over and was then considered an American territory. So a lot of the history changed very quickly, and his story got lost. So this process of the statue, Sime Caglian, who is a world-renowned painter and sculptor, was brought to us by one of our board members, Stu Burley. And Sime himself he lives in Kalihibai, and he had a studio also in Hanapepe. So he came and he talked to us, and Aletha felt he was the person who could best make physically present in a statue the spirit of Kaumualiʻi. And he used Dr. K. Naismith, who is also now on our board. Aletha chose him. She thought that she saw him in the picture, Brooks' picture, but also had hopes that that would be the personification of the bronze statue. So as I said, we started with a 3-foot maquette. So in order to get to 8 feet, there were several pieces that needed to be built, foam pieces, and then the first clay cast is built around that. And from the clay, there's plaster, and then the lost wax to the bronze. So you can see there is Kauaʻi on the bottom. He went over the foundry. It was in Southern California. There is not a foundry on this island that is able to generate the heat and furnace hot enough to do a large scale bronze statue. So he went over, you see him putting the patina on it. And this was still happening. This happened throughout the pandemic. The work on the statue was still finished. And our goal was to have him back on island in October. And we just made that goal. We got both our permits from Kauaʻi County, and the statue came home. The king came home, and he resided from October until March at Ho'okuheiau in Princeville until the site was ready. So these are some other people who were very instrumental in putting another piece of this story of the king's journey home back to Kauaʻi. But I do want to go back and say that the resolution that put into words that Malia referenced was pivotal, because it became the voice of Hawaiian people who said, this is our king, this was one of our kings, and we want this king and this place to be recognized as a Hawaiian sacred place. I don't know if you would say more, but
Yeah. No, that's perfect. So part of my own personal mo'olelo too has been, and I've shared this in some of our community meetings as this statue was being worked on. So we had these community meetings in Waimea with different stakeholders, and I was invited as a part of the Kaumualiʻi Hawaiian Civic Club. And as I sat in these meetings, I learned more about Kaumualiʻi. I learned more about this vahipana, which I now call Pa'ulaʻula. Growing up here on Kauaʻi, for the last almost 50 years now, I passed this place so many times, going to Waimea High School, day in, day out. Going to Polihale or to Koke'e, we would always pass this vahipana. Very rarely would we pull in because we didn't have a connection to the place. Growing up, we always, like you said earlier, we would all call it Russian Fort. And we were like, well, maybe if we needed to stop for a bathroom break or before we head up to Koke'e, we would do that. But there was nothing really drawing us to the area. But because of being in the community meetings and learning more from Auntie Alitha and other Ohana members about our mo'olelo and about the connection to Pa'ulaula. I think we all started to feel this energy draw to now, which is what is becoming a piko for a part of our kona moku. And I really wanted to say mahalo because now I can't pass Pa'ulaula without saying aloha to Kaumualiʻi at this time, you know. And even when I'm exiting, I went into Waimea last night, and whether it's something that's said out loud or something that I am just sharing that energy, whether going in or out of Waimea, there is that mahalo that is given. And so, you know, for the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs, one of the things that we do is have an annual convention, and part of our advocacy and civic engagement of how Prince Kuhio has modeled it for us has been to do this through resolutions and to find things, mo'olelo like this, that inspire us to now look at how we can bring this so that our community can be engaged and to advocate for our new policies. And so we found this as an opportunity as the Kauaʻi-based clubs to now bring it to a larger gathering. And so together we wrote to one, I think our main thing was to honor the story of Kaumualiʻi, and two, to do it through the changing of the name, because currently it is recognized as this historic site that's called Russian Fort. But we are advocating for the renaming of it to be Pa'ulaula. And like you already shared, the entire Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs stood behind this resolution and will support us every step of the way. And, you know, Auntie Alitha is a founding member of Kaumualiʻi Hawaiian Civic Club, and, you know, has genealogical ties to Kaumualiʻi. So I wanted to maybe open it up to Auntie Alitha to also share more about why is it so important for us to have this statue, which is now there at Pa'ulaula, and the connection to Kaumualiʻi.
Thank you. Pa'ulaula, I have to tell, excuse me. You will find printed, it's called Pa'ulaula Uhipo. That is incorrect. The name of the heiau, which was made into a, the heiau was converted into a fort, was Pa'ulaula, no Ohipo. Who added Ohipo to it? Ohipo was Sam Kamakau, who never lived on Kauaʻi, comes there. I don't know who he talked to, but his writings become Pa'ulaula Ohipo. Hipo is the point at the end of that area. It is a cave. And when you are a fisherman and you're out on the sea, that is one of your markers. You mark where out on the sea, 2 markers, and that is one. So it's a cave out on the point there. That's Hipo. Why did we choose Pa'ulaula? There were many people that wanted to put it down in the Waimea and in the downtown section there. There's a little park there that's called in the business area. To me, he belonged, right? It was my sense that it needed to be where he grew up. He didn't grow up in Waimea town. He grew up in Pa'ulaula. That is where, raised by his mother, as said. He also learned English. Why? Because he had to trade. Now, his English was very spicy because he learned it from the sailors. But when the missionaries came in 1820, he welcomed them. Why? They brought home home from Boston, or I would say from Cornwall, Connecticut. They brought him home. We are changing. I have been meeting with the state and with the Russians. Why was it called Russian Fort? It was Jackson. He was a surveyor. He surveyed the area, and then he saw this little note had Old Russian Fort. So he named it Russian Fort. But the state, or I would say the territory of Hawaii, did not do any research. So everybody thinks that the fort was built by the Russians. It was not built by the Russians. It was designed by John Shea. European, star-shaped. It was built by thousands of Hawaiians and even the queens of the king. Kaumualiʻi's wives also built the fort. That is the rightful place for it. And some of the questions that we get is, why is he facing, I will say, southwest? He's not facing the ocean of the fort, which is regular south. He's facing Kauaʻi and Niihau were both his kingdom. It's also set on the summer solstice, where the sun sets. That's where he had them. So this whole thing has been a spiritual journey, not only for me, but for all the friends and all of those that have helped us. So I think we've covered pretty much why it should be there. Yeah, that's his home.
So one person that wasn't mentioned yet, that was also pivotal, laying another strong foundation in this weaving of the lay of the journey home, was Dr. Peter Mills. And if you've heard that name before, it's because he was here in the mid-1990s doing archaeological research on the fort. And so when the Russians painted this grandiose story of what the fort looked like, he would say, but this is the research, this is the archaeology, this is the true story. And so his book, Hawaii's Russian Adventure, subsequent to his work, tells the real story of who built the fort, and that it was a heiau first. And the pictures that you have up now bring us to March, when the king is ready to come home now and the site not done yet. And so we put a kahea out to the community. And you have to know, if you know West Kauaʻi and all Kauaʻi, people have 2 and 3 jobs and are on, you know, this board and that board, whether it's Pa'akai Ohana or a civic club or many things. They're very committed, high level of community awareness. But we put the kahea out to help us take the stones, the very stones on the property that were once from the fort, but also even previous to that, had been part of the heiau. So we were able to go into the sides and dig out the stones and place them to rebuild the fort, reweave the story, reconnect the people. And we had, I think, 60 people, close to that there, because they were all moving around, some working on the fort, many. And you can see by these pictures, it was families, it was children, it was mothers with children, and it was a lot of back-breaking labor. And Peleke Flores on our board, you may know him from his primary mission is to restore Alekoko Fish Pond in Niumalu, but he is also on our board. So he led the rock work. And unfortunately, we weren't allowed, because it's a state property, to do dry stack, which is the original way. We had to fill in with concrete. And right now, to finish that, there's going to be a cap placed on the top. But we had 60 people there who took time on a Saturday, 4 days, Saturday, Sunday, for a couple of weeks. Go from first the Kikiaola construction did the pad, the kahua, and the pedestal that was to hold this 1,500-pound statue. And the people in the community came out and carried stones and built it. And it was like a deja vu, like a cyclical thing. 200 years ago, there were, as Aletha said, 1,000 Hawaiians and Queens working on the fort. They wanted to impart their mana, and our community came back and said, we will do this, and they did. And where do we go from here? Well, there's more work to be done, and there's more stories to be told. But we thank the people who came and did this. We thank Peter Mills for showing us the true history of our own culture here. For he will be back. We will be doing, we had planned to do a genealogy conference last May with the Hyatt as a partner, but of course, you know, we got COVID interrupted. We tried to do it again with Malia by Zooming it, and then Brooke Parker got COVID. So we will do it by the end of the year. And it's not for everyone necessarily to come and, you know, it's like a family party, like a family reunion. Come, here's some more stories. Why is Kauaʻi the peaceful place? Where did that lineage come from? From Manu Kalani Po, from his father Kukona, who, again, another cycle there of a big island king trying to take over Kauaʻi without success. So let's connect to these stories, and let's bring our own stories of the people who have long histories here and have scraps of paper. They walk in regularly to Aletha's office at the Heritage Center and say, I have this thing from my auntie. Where do I belong on the chart? Let's start to reconnect all of those different little threads to build this lei into our community.
Mahalo. And you know, we all love this photo that was taken on that day. I believe that the statue was there, and we were all there to celebrate. And what a beautiful ho'ailona to all of us, and of course in honor of Kaumualiʻi and to his ohana. And I know we're coming towards the end, and we wanted to invite people, if you have any questions, you can put that in the chat now, whether you're on Facebook or here on Zoom. But as we're fielding any of these questions, I wanted to maybe put it out there to Auntie Aletha or even to Maureen. If people want to continue to get involved, because the work is not done, right? I mean, there's more work to be done. You started to share some of this. How can the community continue to help if they're here in person on Kauaʻi, or maybe some are afar and they want to contribute in different ways? How can they be a part of this movement to honor our King Kaumualiʻi?
There are two things that's happening right now. One is that from your article, people are coming. An elderly woman, 87 years old, out from Hanalei, now living in Kilauea. Annie Hashimoto came Saturday because she read your article and she brought ho'okupu. We have to educate our people that the ho'okupu, they can offer it to the king in the statue, but put it on the ahu, because otherwise it becomes, opala dry all over the place. So, you know, we have to go up there and clean that up. So if you're going to pay respect, you can walk up, offer it to him, but we'll put it on the ahu. And the ahu is right outside of the entrance. Okay? That's one thing. The other, I'm getting emails from people that are related to Kaumualiʻi. As I said, I don't know how long Friends of Kaumualiʻi is going to be in existence. I'm going to be 91 next month.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping the Ohana can get together, maybe want to call themselves Haleo Kaumualiʻi or the House of Kaumualiʻi, and be your responsibility. We have built it, but we need cooperation in maintaining it. The friends have to maintain that. We're looking at security because there's nothing around there, folks. There's not even a home. The river, and that divides the community. So if there's any way that you can help, if you're related, maybe we can start something, get all the ohana together. No hila hila. Don't be ashamed because the mama is maybe makaaina na. Never mind. I've come from that. But it comes from your heart. That's all unite. Unite and believe. And I will tell you this little thing before I hang up. Mea Kawakami, I don't know if he's watching, but Kaumualiʻi is his model. You notice this, well, we're going through this pandemic. Hawaii is always different. Well, that's what he's doing. And he was there that day, and I expected, a political speech or something. No, he told everybody the story about the white stone and the black stone, So we're trying to influence our political people too. Yeah. And I just want to thank many of you that have sent your donations to help this. It didn't take only me. It might have taken an inspiration, but it took many people. Not only Hawaiians, all people. So mahalo, and I don't know how to say thank you, but mahalo nui, you know.
So I
I'm
would
very
add
grateful, very grateful.
have other, that we'll continue to have other events, our rescheduled genealogy one. And also we are, even though it's on state property, we are the caretakers. So monthly cleanups would be helpful. And something about the ahu, Aletha touched on it. Besides using the stone, the rocks from that place, Peleke's vision was that people, if they come from somewhere else on the island, they would bring a pohaku from their own yard. So it's reconnecting that family, that area, back to the place of Kaumualiʻi. It's an honor to bring a stone from your place and build the foundation of support there with us. So that's why it looks now, when you see it, a little bit empty. It will grow up if people bring pohaku from other places. And of course we can fill in more. So that's another way to bring a piece of you to be part of that project.
Mahalo. And I see in our Zoom chat and probably on our Facebook chat, you can connect with the Friends of King Kaumualiʻi on their newly launched and beautiful website. And that's kauaʻikingkaumualiʻi.org. They also have a Facebook page as well that you can go and follow and like. And then our OHA team also added in the link to the new article. If you don't have it, I have it here. Hard to see, the Kauaʻi. And on the front page was the Kauaʻi Honors King Kaumualiʻi photo, and you can read this beautiful mo'olelo in the Kauaʻi, whether you get the one in the actual printed one, or you can see it on their website, and they also shared that link as well. So mahalo nui to friends of King Kaumualiʻi and to Auntie
Mahalo.
Alita and Maureen for sharing mo'olelo today.
Well, I mahalo
Oh,
you, Kaliko, for inviting us to tell our story and to be interested in the story, to share it with others, because we have information on our website, lots of stories, lots of videos, and you putting us in the limelight here helps draw people to go and see what else they would like to know. And I appreciate the kokua.
mahalo. And if you're ever in town in Waimea, please drop by and see Auntie. One of the very first things, or as you talk with her, she's going, "Aren't you related to King Kaumualiʻi?" Which kind of inspires you to go check out your genealogy. So that's a good one. So mahalo. I know it, Auntie is a very, very, very spry and very, very busy 90-year-old. So this was the only time we could get her. Today is her day off. So it was the only day we could get her. So mahalo, Auntie. Mahalo, Maureen. Mahalo, Malia. Absolutely. So if you have any more questions, please drop it in the chat or the OHA website thingy, and then we'll pass it on to friends of King Kaumualiʻi, and they can probably put it on their Facebook chat. So mahalo, everyone, and you have a great day.
Ai, aloha.
Aloha.